Test 3. You will hear a number of different recordings and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1. Section 1. You will hear a survey company representative ringing a person to obtain some information. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Hello?
Hello? Who is this?
Hello, I'm a representative of the Tally-Ho Survey Company, and I'd like to ask you a few questions regarding exercise.
Ah, that's an interesting subject.
The representative will ask questions about exercise, so exercise has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello?
Hello? Who is this?
Hello, I'm a representative of the Tally-Ho Survey Company, and I'd like to ask you a few questions regarding exercise.
Ah, that's an interesting subject.
Yes, we think so too.
But I'm afraid I'm a bit busy at the moment.
Don't worry, this will only take about 4 minutes at the most. It's 10:25 now, so it will all be over by 10:30.
Well, all right, if it's that short.
It will be. So, one of the first things I need to know is where you are, that is, which suburb or area of the city. The last client was in Blackburn, for example.
Blackburn, that's close to me. I'm in Box Hill.
Another eastern suburb, then. I have a friend in Box Hill, too. Interesting place. Now, I need your approximate age for this survey. Are you younger than 20, between 20 and 29, 30 and 39, and so on?
I'll turn 40 in a few months, so that puts me in the 40 to 49 age group.
Well, that's in a few months, so right now you're in the 30 to 39.
Oh, right, so put that then.
OK. Now, I need to know your occupation. The last caller was a housewife, for example. The one before that, a teacher.
I used to be a teacher too, teaching cookery.
And now?
Now you can just put domestic duties. Actually, I hope to begin a new job soon as a cook, but that won't be for some time yet. I have to wait for my husband's restaurant to open.
Cook? That sounds interesting. But it's domestic duties for now. OK, that just leaves some information about your family. This is not obligatory at all, so if you don't want to answer, that's fine.
What sort of information exactly?
Oh, it's very broad. Married with children, single mother, that sort of thing. The last customer said she was a single mother.
I'm married and not a mother. Put married, no children.
I'm married with children myself, but I'll put in your details. And that finishes the profile and just leaves the actual survey itself if you're ready to proceed.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
All right, let's begin the survey now about your exercise habits.
I'm afraid I don't exercise much at all.
Well, the main question is in what form you take your exercise, however little that may be. For example, in just cleaning. Do you clean the house?
My husband does the cleaning actually, but I walk to the supermarket and shops very often, up to 4 times a week.
I'll put that then, unless there's something else.
Nothing else really, but I diet. I'm very strict about what I eat. Oh, and I do yoga, although that's not very energetic. More a form of relaxation and to tighten my muscles.
They're both important, of course. But what about sport? Do you undertake any sporting activities? This could be very infrequent. In the past, for example.
My husband plays basketball at the local school and I sometimes watch. When he was younger, he was in a basketball team, but I never participated.
Have you done anything at all?
I used to hike in a nearby national park.
Well, that's a definite physical activity, so I'll put that, but not basketball. All right, that just leaves future exercise intentions. Do you plan or expect to do, at some stage, any form of exercise?
I once dreamt of doing modern dance, but that's never going to happen. Realistically, I'm thinking about going swimming at the local aquatic centre. Although my husband thinks we should just jog. I can't see myself doing that though. Too tiring.
I can understand. I used to jog too, and it really makes you sweat. I'd say swimming's a much better option.
But I'll be starting this job as a cook in my husband's restaurant. I imagine I'll be very tired doing all those late shifts. But if I have any energy left over, I might go to the aquatic centre to release some stress.
All right, well, that's the end of the survey. Thank you very much for your time.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2. Section 2. You will hear a maintenance worker talking to a university officer about some recent storm damage to the main building. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Hello there. I was asked to tell you about the extent of the damage to the main building caused by the recent storm.
Oh, that's right. I take it that most of the damage is just to the main building?
It is indeed, since the building is so old. However, luckily, the damage is minor and all of it can be fixed in one day, given that we have 5 people in our team.
What will you be doing first? I understand you start at 8 in the morning.
That's right. And we were going to remove the fallen tree, but we've been told there are exams that morning, and I'm sure the sound of those saws and other heavy equipment will disturb all the students. So instead we'll fix that leaky roof. That's a 4-hour job, since it involves substantial repair, not like fixing broken windows, which can be done quite quickly.
So you'll fix the broken window after that, from midday?
We could do that, but since we'll be working in the ceiling, it's more logical to get rid of those birds' nests there. It's a small job, but will require crawling inside the ceiling cavity, which is not an easy exercise, so that will take about an hour. But this is good, since by that time the exams should be over, and we can address that tree which has been blown over. After our 1-hour lunch break, of course. It will be quite noisy dealing with that, but it will be finished by 3 o'clock. Some of our staff will then leave to fix things on another site. An office nearby needs a new window. But 2 of us, including myself, will remain here to paint over that discoloured patch of wall in your office.
Oh, good. It looks so horrible at the moment.
Well, we'll certainly make it look good once again. And in the last hour of our working day, we'll fix up that problem with the wiring. Apparently the power doesn't go to one of the classrooms. Probably some water has gotten into the fuse box, so we'll just change a few wires and clean up the moisture, and it should be fine.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
I certainly appreciate all the effort you and your team are taking to fix things here, but I do have one request.
And what is that?
You said you're going to paint the back wall in my office. Will it be the same colour as before?
Yes, we'll make it a nice white colour.
Well, that's the point. I'd prefer it to be yellow to match the furniture. The furniture is orange, actually, but I think yellow is a nice match. Can you do that?
We can certainly do that. Yellow it is. Certainly a prettier colour than just plain white, or the blue in my kitchen at home for that matter. And we can leave the paint can with you in case you need to do some touch-ups or if the stain reappears. I'll just leave it in the garden shed, the one next to the main classroom. And incidentally, about those birds in the ceiling, I was just investigating and I heard the chirping of little baby birds in there, so there must be some young ones in a nest. I just thought you'd like to know that we can give them to a wildlife reserve. There's one in the next suburb, so that should not be too much trouble.
Or you could give them to one of our teachers. I have a colleague who can raise them.
I would say the wildlife reserve is a better option, since the people there are used to dealing with animals. And as for that fallen tree, we'll cut it up into small pieces, and that can be firewood in my house, so that won't be wasted either, although the smoke will cause some pollution. But I have a special licence for my fireplace, so no one can object to that. I've noticed also that the university has a garden bin for the smaller items, leaves and sticks and bark and so on, so we can dispose of material in that also. You do have some waste piles out the back, but a proper garden bin means that the material will be recycled, and that's better for the environment, so you can rest assured we will use that.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear 2 students, Frank and Nicole, discussing their research on university waste. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hi, Nicole. As you know, we've got to decide on the best ways this university can reduce its waste. You inspected the Eastern campus and I did the Western buildings. Did you do all the interviews as well?
Yes, I interviewed all the staff who made some good observations, and I interviewed some of the students. The students said little that was interesting. They don't seem to care that much. It was the cleaners, surprisingly, who revealed the most relevant facts.
That's not surprising to me. They empty all the bins, so they see the waste firsthand, whereas the staff just throw things away without thinking. What item was most commonly disposed of?
Well, it really depended on where I interviewed. In the cafeteria precinct, obviously paper plates and cups were thrown away all over the place. There was almost no attempt at recycling. However, across the university in general, it was paper copying that filled up most bins, far more than plastic or other forms of waste.
Do people care about this, then?
Well, some do, if you can believe them. I must have interviewed about 30% of customers in the cafeteria, and the results were mixed. Out of all the people I interviewed, well over half, maybe about 55% of them, were quite honest about it, telling me that they had little concern. The other fraction, 45%, were more troubled.
Yes, but do they do anything about it?
Surprisingly, quite a significant percentage do something, even if they aren't particularly concerned. I mean, small things. About 10% bring their own cups to the cafeteria, for example, and at least 1/3 said they use recycling bins. So, in total, it's an equal split between those who do something or those who don't.
So why do so many people remain inactive, particularly over an issue they should care about more?
I think they do care, and many of them are prepared to do something. Obviously, there's an element of laziness, but I'd say that it's relatively small. If they knew what to do, and if stringent systems existed, or if the importance of this was made clearer to them, I'm sure you'd see a much larger percentage of people actively working towards helping our environment.
Well, there's cause for optimism at least.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Clearly then, there's a significant waste of paper here at this university, so I've worked out one practical suggestion which could help reduce it, specifically the waste from the excess photocopying.
Let me hear it then.
Obviously, for a start, we've got to ensure that everyone, including the staff, without exception, copy both sides of a page. We can't tolerate single-sided copying. It's just far too wasteful.
Absolutely. Just more trees being chopped down.
But as people are doing copying, there may be adjustments and practice copying, producing single-sided copies or blank pages not wanted and not intended for use. These need to be deposited into a tray for intended recycling. You know, for recopying onto the blank side of the page.
But people don't usually do that. I'm afraid it's just human nature. No matter how unimportant the copying is, they prefer to use fresh paper.
Yeah, I agree with you, which is why you need to display these papers right in front of everyone with a clear sign, "Please reuse," to make it easy for them to do so.
They still won't do it.
I know. That's why you take some of these papers and regularly stack them inside the copier in a special tray once a day, say in the morning.
Well, that's getting better, making it easier for them to use the paper. But still, I'm afraid many won't.
That's why you allow everyone to select this tray when copying. You distribute numbers or codes to every person, giving them special access to this recycling tray. Every time they use papers from this, it's tallied up to their account.
I know I'm sounding a bit negative, or even cynical here, but why should they bother using that tray?
Because the person who does the most copying from this recycling tray gets, say, a cinema pass or lottery ticket or some other sort of reward.
Ah, right. Now that's a system which might just work. Let's trial it in the office and see what happens.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 4. Section 4. You will hear a lecturer discussing movie ratings. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 34. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 34.
One of the most popular pastimes all over the world is watching movies, whether that be at cinemas, at homes on the TV through commercial channels, or DVDs, or internet downloads. Given this popularity, it is clear that movies can influence the way people think and act, which is why there must necessarily be a motion picture rating system, so that people are made aware in advance of the movie's content. The factors involved are bad language and the cinematic portrayal of sex, violence, drug use, and antisocial or criminal behaviour. For example, virtually all countries will ban movies outright if the scenes involved glorify crime or show criminals getting away with their goods. Imagine, for example, a bank robbery film where the criminals end up retired in Brazil, living lives of luxury with their ill-gotten gains. Such a message may encourage impressionable young men to go and rob banks themselves, since it seems so easy. Thus, in all movies, crime inevitably leads to bad outcomes, in one way or another, be that prison, unhappiness, or death. Yet there are still variations among countries. In Australia, for instance, it is the government which decides on the rating through a special review board, whereas in America, it is the movie industry itself which decides this through a trade association representing the major studios. Furthermore, different cultures may view movies in different ways. Sexual content is viewed more leniently in Europe, but frowned upon in the West. Yet Western cinema often permits levels of violence which European cinema would never allow. And further complications come in when judging a movie within its historical context. For example, a war movie, designed by its makers to be realistic, will necessarily have graphic violence, which will often be permitted, providing it is not glorified in any way.
Before you hear the rest of the lecture, you have some time to look at questions 35 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 35 to 40.
Since America produces the bulk of the world's most watched movies, why don't we look in detail at their movie rating system? It begins with the innocent G rating, standing for general audience, allowing all ages, even very young children, into the cinema. The films are fun and community-oriented, with nothing which would be objectionable. They are often released for the summer holidays, when children are free from school. But if these movies have a mild element of violence or inappropriate and lewd humour, or some scary scenes, then it would be a PG movie, standing for Parental Guidance Needed. This PG rating comes in two forms though. The weak version, a simple PG, or the strong version, PG-13. Most American movies are issued with this latter rating, since it allows the greatest proportion of the population to watch the movie, by which I mean children alongside their parents, while still allowing the movie itself to show society as it really is. Any rating higher than this will restrict children and limit viewership. In fact, if a movie, when shown to the trade association, fails to be issued with the PG-13, the offending scenes are often removed by the movie makers in order to secure this lower rating and ensure the greatest viewership. What all movie studios want to avoid is the R, or restricted rating. This means that younger children can only watch the film if accompanied by their parents, and many young teenagers simply don't want to do this. These films might have swearing, drug use, or horror scenes with blood and gore. And if these images are particularly graphic, the rating is lifted to NC-17. NC means no children. In other words, the movie is for adults only. Since it is the younger market who are particularly intent on paying to see movies, many big cinemas simply don't bother showing NC films. There is simply little to no profit involved, meaning that such films, often made by smaller independent film companies, are similarly released by independent theatres. Even then, these films only have what is known in the business as a limited theatrical release.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.